Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream or the replay of the live stream. If you're watching this after the fact, it doesn't have that nice red live comment at the top there. This is our A+ study group. We'll be getting started in about 10 minutes. So if you are watching on the replay and you don't want to sit through all of this looking at the back of my head and wondering what in the world is he doing with that many screens in front of him, you can fast forward 10 minutes and we'll actually be starting. You'll notice when you fast forward, you'll know when it starts. 10 minutes, almost exactly, into it. Of course, on the website is a replay of everything. So you can always go back and see exactly time frames. And if you're watching after the fact and you look at the video descriptions, there are descriptions with links that will take you to every part of the study group. So you'll be able to just click the link below and jump to the very beginning. And now things are making noise in my studio. I thought we had turned off everything. Had we? No, of course not. Of course we had not. So let's try to get everything turned off. How about this thing too? There we go. That's turned off. This is turned off. All the things are turned off. I already did the podcast intro, so you missed all of that. I've already checked the cameras. You missed all of those things too. All the things you miss when you're not here. Let's see how we're doing on the YouTube side. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, you may be missing out on the live chat, which for some reason I'm not looking at. There it is. Hi, chat room. So I am able to have the live chat there. If you go to professormesser.com/live, you'll notice there is no live chat on the YouTube. I don't use YouTube's live chat. I use the one on my site. So we're all on one page. We don't have multiple chats going. Then I'd never know what was going on. We do all of those things. Thanks for joining us. Hello, chat room. You're welcome for the Security Plus videos. That's one where I was glad to get those done. That's a big course. That's a big one. Kosovo is here. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We've got all A+ questions today. I wonder if I have my A+ questions up. I need to probably make sure I have all of those in order. There's my podcast stuff. Let's be done with this. Let's go back to study groups. That would be good. Why is nothing in my study? Nothing is organized. It all has names of exactly where things are supposed to go. And for some reason, none of the things are exactly where they're supposed to be. So I've created these nice folders and I've organized things, but nothing's in the right folder. That's Microsoft OneNote for you. They messed up everything with OneNote. Actually, it was Evernote is the ones that messed it up. They changed their licensing and everybody had to leave Evernote. And so here I am trying to make OneNote work. And it doesn't. It doesn't work that great. Just so you know. So that's how it works. Oh, Ohio is cold. What's the temperature here? The temperature here in Florida, in the northern part of Florida, a chilly 49 degrees. We can go through a hurricane, but if it drops below 60, we have no idea what to do. So, of course, I've got warm clothes on today. I had to wear socks. I know. What's up with that? That wasn't part of the plan. That wasn't what I wanted to do. So, anyway, here we are anyway. The seminar, the live stream, is, of course, on YouTube. This will be recorded as well. All of the previous study groups are all available on my website, professormesser.com. So that's why you'll see that there. I'm actually streaming live on YouTube as a platform. So if you are watching this, as I mentioned, on YouTube, you'll notice there's no chat room. And I'm talking to people in the chat room as if, who's he talking to? I'm talking to people right there in the chat room. But you don't see any of that because you're not on professormesser.com/live. I don't use the YouTube chat room. So there you go. Where can you get virtual labs for A+? I have no idea these days. That's a really good question. Maybe somebody else can recommend some. So that works too. From Palm Beach, you're only 5 hours away. How do you drive from Palm Beach and make it here in 5 hours? I don't think that's legal. I don't think you can really do that. That doesn't work that way. It's not even close. But it's a nice idea. You're not only 5 hours away. unfortunately. Not even close. You could probably not even drive illegally and make it in 5 hours. That probably wouldn't. Do I have content coming out for the new A+ core? I do. It's already on the website. I'm already putting things out there. Course notes are already available. The first set of videos are already there. It's all on the website, professormesser.com. Links are available on the main page from the pull-down menus. They're all in there. So that's why. That's why. You've got plenty of things to find there if you're interested in the newer A+. We'll be talking more about no, I'm not in Jacksonville. We'll be talking more about the newer A+ next month. The newer A+ videos are already starting, but we won't talk about the newer A+ until next month. January is when the actual release is available. But I'll have, of course, videos coming out before then. And in the after show, if you have a specific question, we can certainly talk about it. I've gone through, of course, all of the content of the new A+ certification. I know what's new, what's old. I have a document, a post that I'll be creating soon that talks about the differences so that people know. But the basic too long didn't read was that there's not much different between them. It's just slightly updated. It probably is the least different update to any of the CompTIA certifications that I've ever seen. That's how little has been updated. They got rid of some things that were nice to get rid of. They added some things that were nice to add. But overall, it's hardware is hardware, and operating systems are operating systems. And Windows 7 is still Windows 7. Windows 8 is still Windows 8. Windows 10 is the same thing as Windows 7 and Windows 8. Quite honestly, there's not much difference there either. The screens are a little different, but that's just about it. So there's not much different there either. So we can talk all about it. We've got 3 minutes to go before we get started. 3. 1, 2, 3. We will get started shortly. We've got questions in the first hour. We've got answers. I don't know that there's nothing to study right now for the new version. You won't see books available for the new version probably until March. So no, don't study for the new version. Study for the existing version. It's not even the old version yet. It doesn't become an old version. It's still available until July 31st. So up until August, people will still be taking these tests. I assure you, people will be taking these tests on July 31st at 4:59 p.m. local time. They will be taking them all the way up until they are no longer available. And why wouldn't you? The most amount of content to study from is on the existing exams. Of course you would take the existing exams. But as I mentioned, you can decide for yourself. I don't think anybody should ever wait to get certified. I would never wait for certification content to appear. Because even if they say it's going to be available by March, will it really? So who knows? We can talk about all of that. We got a minute and a half till we get started. I think we're in good shape here. I think we've got going on. Yeah, they got new names, Core 1 and Core 2. I don't know why if there's Core 1 and Core 2, what is non-core? I don't know what that means. So that's what they called it, though. But it's the 221,001 and the 221,002. And they did finally put exam objectives. They announced everything on the website. You can find everything out there on the CompTIA website. They've got it all there. You can sort through it like I already have. Yes, if you're asking if this is the chat for the A+ study group, this is the chat for the live event, the A+ study group, which starts just a few moments. I'm waiting for the top of the hour. Then we'll be getting started promptly. Make sure that's running. We have recordings going down here. We have recordings going up here. It's recording out in the cloud. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. I think we just need to get through this piece of it and get things started. There is a lot of questions. This first hour, second hour will be just call in. You can ask anything about the college show. I plan just live streaming me playing The Division in the second hour. No, I won't. I won't do that to you. I promise. That would be sad for all of us. Instead, I'll just open up the phone lines and we can take phone calls, and that'll be much better, won't it? So let's get started, this keyboard is a Microsoft, I think it's a 7000 ergonomic keyboard, for those of you wondering. And it is a QWERTY keyboard. So there you go. You've got 2 answers. And let's get going, everyone. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the December 2018 Professor Messer A+ Study Group from our world headquarters here in Tallahassee, Florida, where it is a frigid 49 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure how we're surviving, but that's what the winter brings. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for being here. We would not be able to do these study groups without you. During this first hour, we're going to do all study group Q&A. We're going to ask questions from the A+ exam, and I'll be giving you the answers for those questions. And then after the first hour, I'm just going to open up the phone lines. If you are watching this on the YouTube, you may notice there's no chat there, but I'm often talking to people in the chat room, which are right here in front of me. You blue people here on the screen, you're the chat room. You'll find the chat room at professormesser.com/live. Obviously, if you're watching this in a replay, there's no chat room available. If you're watching this in the replay, there's no live interactive Q&A, but you can still follow along with us with the Q&A, and I hope you do. We've got plenty of things to go through. I'll tell you in just a moment how you do that, how you can participate live, answer the questions live. We can see how you did. You'll have it all there in front of you. First, a couple of announcements. The studio line will be open in the second hour, where it's just open phone lines. I threatened earlier just to play video games. We'll turn it into a Twitch session, but it's not going to be that at all. I'm just going to take your phone line questions, or you can ask questions from the chat room. So we'll do that as well. Either way is fine with me. Don't forget to follow us on the Twitter. The Twitter has daily pop quiz questions, which are kind of nice, all for free at professormesser.com/Twitter. And there are new videos coming out right now for the newer A+ exam, which we'll talk about in the after show. I'll tell you all the things I know so far, and there's actually been announcements from CompTIA. Plenty there. You can find out about that on the YouTube. And if you really wanted to support what we're doing here, it's the thing that everybody tells you to do. Please subscribe to my channel on YouTube. The reason they tell you that is because it is so important. It allows us to get extra special care from the folks at Google and YouTube. So go to professormesser.com/YouTube and you subscribe. It's free. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to turn on notifications if you don't want them. That's completely up to you. But it's quite a bit of support that it provides. And I want to thank you so much for those that have subscribed already. It's not just an ego thing. It is an ego thing, but it's not just an ego thing. It actually really does help me because I have a person now at Google that I can talk to at the YouTube. It's really nice to have that there. We're able to do this live event thanks to you. We have a downloadable version of all of our training courses out on professormesser.com. But of course, we have all of my videos available, every minute of every video available for you to watch, absolutely free. Just go to professormesser.com. You can watch all of them. Sometime in this first hour, I'm going to give you instructions on how you can obtain a digitally signed email from me certifying that you must have been here to watch this 1 hour of webinar CEU. So be listening out sometime during this first hour. I will give you instructions. You must follow those instructions to the letter. Following the instructions is part of earning the CEU, which is why I do that. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. You can earn, depending on the certification you get, you can earn up to 4 CEUs in a 3-year cycle just by watching these study groups. How fun is that? So we'll talk more about that sometime during the first hour. Talk about those. This study group is all about the current version, the only version of the A+ exam that is available. It is the 22901 and the 22902. We are going to go through a lot of questions dealing with topics from those exam objectives. Now, as some of you have mentioned in the chat room, there is a new exam series that will be released in January, but this current 901 and 902 exam will be available until July 31st of 2019. So we got plenty of time. If you're studying for your A+ exam and you're studying the 22901 and 22902, keep studying. You've got plenty of time. You probably won't even see books available for the new version until March. So you got plenty there. So people are even asking right now, so are the things that are online that say 22901 and 22902, are those still up to date? Yes, they are. They're up to date until July the 31st. So you have 7 months now that you've got available. It's plenty of time to take the 2 exams that you would need to take, which would be the 229.01 and the 229.02. And that covers everything on the 901 from hardware, networking, mobile devices, hardware, network troubleshooting. The 902 is Windows operating systems, Linux, Mac OS, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. They're 2 big exams. There's some pretty good ones there. So you do need to keep an eye on what is there and available on those exams. Make sure you download the exam objectives. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. You may not realize we got free questions online. You can go to professormesser.com/popquiz, and I've got questions that I've archived from this study group. So you can go take hundreds of questions available that deal with topics from the 229.01 and 229.02. So plenty there that are available. You can check those out at professormesser.com/popquiz. All of these study groups are also archived into an audio-only format available on your podcast reader or directly from this page, professormesser.com/podcast. You can go there and subscribe to my A+ study group, Network Plus, and Security Plus study group, and it automatically will appear in your favorite podcasting catching program. You can, of course, play it from that page as well. So there's plenty that you can find on a replay. And, of course, all the video replays are also available on my website. Just go to professormesser.com. You can find those there as well. Now, we're going to do Q&A today. Here's how you can participate. Pop open a new browser window, open up your mobile device to your browser, and go to professormesser.com/QA. And it will take you directly to the first question that's already there waiting for you. By the way, there's a question that's sitting there, and they're asking things of you. I'll show you that in just a moment. There's also an app available you can download for your mobile device. You want the Socrative Student app. There's also a Socrative Teacher app. That's the one for me. There's a Student app. That's the one you'll want to use for you. And you can, of course, go there. If you use that app, it may ask you for a room name, and that room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. It sounds the same, but it's spelled a little different there. There's O's and E's, and you don't want to mess that up. And if you do all of that correctly, you will find a question waiting for you that asks, what type of technology, here we go, if I click the button, what type of technology would be most associated with a CCFL? Now, if you were here last month, this is a question from last month. This is what we call our study group rewind question. We are rewinding back in time and asking the question. We're really just doing this so you can see if you're able to get in and answer the questions as you should. So far, 72, 73 of you have answered the question. The possible answers there are OLED, WPA2, SSD, LCD, and CPU. And you can see in real time, I can see the answers as you're answering them. And in fact, on this one, 69% of you have said LCD. There's a majority there, probably a strong majority have said LCD, over 70% now. So a number of you who have come in are able to click on this. You can see the answers are appearing on my screen. Notice I don't track who you are. I don't have a way to go back and see who clicked on what. I don't track that level. This is just for fun, something we do. Take a stab at it. Take a guess. See how you do. And then we'll see how everybody votes on this at the ends of these questions. I'll give you descriptions of these answers as well, so you figure it out. There is the big question, of course, that you have to know what a CCFL is so that you can then apply some of these other acronyms to it. There's the real challenge of trying to make that happen. I have, of course, a lot of information that I will give you about any of these questions. For example, a CCFL is a cold cathode fluorescent lamp. It's the backlight that is in a number of LCD displays. You have to have a backlight for LCD. LCD doesn't have any lighting mechanism. It's putting colors, but you have to have some way to shine a light through that so you can see those colors. A lot of the modern LCD displays have LEDs in the back. Sometimes you'll see those referred to as LED displays, even though really what they mean is it's an LCD display with an LED backlight, which is a very efficient backlight. Some of the older systems have the cold cathode fluorescent lamps, the CCFLs, in the back. So if you ever run into those older LCDs, these absolutely will have a CCFL. And so if you did answer LCD on here. That is the right answer. OLEDs don't need a backlight, so there is no any type of backlight, either fluorescent or LED on those OLED displays. WPA2 is an encryption mechanism for wireless. SSD is the solid-state drives you would find for storage, and CPU is your central processing unit. None of those things have anything to do with CCFLs. The only thing on this list that does is DLCD. If you chose that, the 73% of you got that one right. If you were here last month, you probably remember that one as well. Now let's do some newer questions. Now you've got the idea, you're into the Q&A, you can answer these now, you're able to find the questions, you can just stay on that page exactly where you are, and everything will update automatically for you in just a moment. Now, one of the things I like to do is when we do these study groups, I try to emulate some of the questions that you will get on the actual exam. And for those of you that have never taken a CompTIA exam before, they are not all multiple choice questions. You may get a question that is anything but multiple choice. It might be fill in the blank. It might be a matching question. It might be a drag and drop. They might be asking you questions to put things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest, or putting things in whatever order they like. You just never know what's going to hit you. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions. The first set of questions that you get at the beginning of the exam, there will be a handful. There might be 3, there might be 8. You never know exactly how many of these you're going to get, but you're going to get a grouping of questions at the beginning of the exam that are not multiple choice questions. Do not be alarmed. Do not think that the entire exam is going to look like this. See, once you get past those, all of the rest of the questions are multiple choice. In fact, what I commonly tell people is to jump over all of those questions, go directly to the multiple choice, and then come back. The CompTIA exams allow you to jump around to any question at any time, so it's one of the things that you can do for those. So it's a good idea to find out if you're trying to strategize on how to do this test properly. It's one way to do it. But for our study groups, we're going to start with a performance-based question. So the first question I have for you for all of my study groups is a performance-based question. You can go back over the last year for all of my study groups, and there's a performance-based question right there that's different than any of the others. So let's do a performance-based question today. This one is a matching question. And on your side, it's going to be fill in the blank. So I'll tell you how to answer it in just a moment. Here is the question. Let me change it on my screen so I can see it. Match the Windows utility to the description. So I have 6 Windows utilities here. And those 6 Windows utilities are expand, GP result, robocopy, RD, disk part, and shutdown. Those are 6 real Windows utilities. In fact, they are 6 real Windows utilities that are in the exam objectives. So you have to know what all 6 of these are. So I have 6 descriptions here that you need to match this to. And if you think they're all matched up already, you can put into the fill in the blank 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, and 6F. As a hint for you, they are not in that order. They are obviously in a different order. Here are the 6 different descriptions. A is restart a computer. B is copy files from one folder to another. C is remove files from a cabinet. D is manage disk configurations. E is remove a folder. And F is view policy settings for a computer or a user. So those are your 6 different descriptions. In this case, it's kind of an easier matching questions because I have 6 utilities and I have 6 descriptions. You might even find on your exam, they might give you 4 utilities and 8 descriptions, and you're not matching it up one-to-one. There'll be some left over. I didn't make it hard this time. I made it a little bit easier this time for you. So for those of you listening on the podcast, the Windows utilities are expand, GP result, robocopy, RD, disk part, and shutdown. So those are the 6 of them. And the different descriptions are restart a computer, copy files from one folder to another, remove files from a cabinet, manage disk configurations, remove a folder, and view policy settings for a computer or a user. Hopefully you're familiar with what some of these utilities are, so you can start putting in the answers. I see a number of you are already putting in answers. Nobody has put in 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5D. So thankfully we're doing good. Some of you are spelling them out. Good for you. spelling out all of these to have them there. There's a lot there. So have a look through all of these different options. See if you can recognize what these might be on the screen. A number of you, I think, are really good at figuring these out. Let's see how we did. We've had a number of people answer this one. I think this one, with 6 of the questions as being this Windows utility and 6 of these being the description, I think a number of you would be able to do pretty well with this. I think those are pretty well to go through. So let's go through them ourselves and see if we can figure out what they are. Let's start with the first one on our list, which is expand. Number 1, expand. For those of you that have never used this utility before, it's a very useful utility that allows you to remove files from a cabinet file. In Windows, a cabinet file is a file that ends with CAB. It's Windows' own compressed format. It's kind of like a zip file, but it's a Windows flavor of it. And that cabinet file, you're able to extract the information from that cabinet file by using the command expand, where we expand things from the cabinet. So that was 1. Expand is matched with C, remove files from a cabinet. Number 2, GP result. GP result refers to, what's that refer to? Viewing policy settings for a computer or user, which is letter F. So when you're dealing with anything trying to determine what's happening with the GP result command, we're trying to pull information directly from Active Directory, being able to see what our global policy settings are. That's the global policy. The GP and GP result is for a global policy. So those are always going to be used to pull information, to view information, dealing with what you're setting for global policies on these devices. So you can see the policy settings for computer or user. Number 3 was robocopy. Well, robocopy, this may have been too much of a giveaway. It copies things, right? Copies files from one folder to another. Robocopy is nice because it has some additional functionality that even goes beyond just copying files and folders. It can, for instance, restart a copy if the connection has been broken. So if you're over a wide area connection, maybe it's a non-terrestrial link, maybe you're copying files over satellite link, and a storm comes in. And if you have satellite television, you know that when a storm comes in, the satellite link goes away. Those high frequencies aren't able to get through all of the water that's in those clouds. It's not able to get through there and get back up to the satellite. So you lose your connection. Well, the same thing happens if it's a data connection, you lose the connection. But with robocopy, it can wait. And when that connection is restored, it can continue copying without losing anything. It's kind of nice to have that there. So number 3, match with B, copy files from one folder to another. Number 4 is RD. RD stands for remove directory. Command that we would use working at the command line to be able to remove an empty directory. And I put here remove a folder. I didn't want to give too much of it away. But in the Windows world, a folder and a directory are effectively the same thing. So removing a folder can happen at the command line by using the RD command. Number 5 was diskpart, the disk partitioning program at the command line, which can do much more than just partition a disk. It can manage many disk configurations for you. So if you chose for 5 diskpart D, manage disk configurations, you got that one right as well. And number 6, shutdown. Shutdown, as the name implies, you can shut down a computer with the shutdown command. Not too surprising. But there are also command line options there to not only shut down, but once it's finished shutting down, start it back up again. That often is something very useful if you're remote and you need to reboot a machine. You can use the shutdown command with the proper flags, the proper options, and then it will, of course, restart that computer when it's doing that. So hopefully you were able to get this. Number 1 was C, number 2 was F, number 3 was B, number 4 was E, 5 matched to D, and 6 matched to A. Hopefully those are some utilities you recognize. Some of you in the chat room said you did very well. 6 is 6, that'd be good. So have those there. I think that helps. Let's shift gears. This should give you a flavor of some of the things you need to be able or be familiar with whenever you're working through these performance-based questions. But now let's do some multiple choice questions, which is what the bulk of your exam is going to be. And as some people are asking in the chat room, so what is the percentage? What is the number that you have to get? There are no percentage numbers that CompTIA uses. Every question is worth a different number of points, so there are no percentages. Just have to do the best you can. So we're going to do the best we can to be able to do this. And we're going to perform or have a question that describes this. I have a multiple choice question coming up next that asks, a system administrator has identified a firewall rule that blocks TCP 389. Which of the following services would be impacted by this policy? Which ones would it be? Would it be A, name resolutions, B, secure terminal communication, C, VPN authentication, D, router performance monitoring, and E, automatic IP address configuration? So if you have a firewall, there's a rule there. It's blocking TCP 389, which you can't see very well because my head's in the way. There it is. Which of the following services would be impacted by this policy? Would it be name resolutions, secure terminal communication, VPN authentication, router performance monitoring, or automatic IP address configuration? That is sort of the problem. People in the chat room asking, what is TCP 389? That is the question, isn't it? Obviously, we don't want to put any hints in the chat room. We want to go to professormesser.com/QA and answer the question there. That is the best place to get the answer to the question. This is one you've been working through. You need to figure out what TCP 389 is associated with. Hopefully, this would be familiar to you. The idea of understanding different port numbers is important on almost everything you do in IT. So the A+ exam, the Network Plus exam, the Security Plus exam, there's an emphasis on port numbers. It's something you need to know. Some of you in the chat room asking about when these exams are available. The 901, 902 tests will be available until July 31st, 2019. So if you're studying these topics, you got plenty of time to study. Keep studying those. You're going to do fine with figuring those things out. In the chat room, I agree. Figuring out all of these different port numbers is a challenge because there are a lot of them. On the A+, there's a lot. And then on the Network Plus, it's almost doubled. There's tons of port numbers you have to know. They're all listed in the exam objectives. There are some people I know that are showing me pages and pages, hundreds of port numbers that they're trying to memorize. Please don't do this. There are only a certain number of ports you need to know. And those port numbers are listed very clearly in the exam objectives. So make sure that you have a look at the exam objectives and figure out what those are. And no Googling. No trying to figure this out. I'm going to look at the answers, by the way, and see how we're doing with this. I think most of us are taking a stab at it. You shouldn't Google this. You couldn't figure it out. Just guess. Take a guess just like you were working through it. Maybe that's something that you'll run into when you start trying to work through your exam. You're sitting there in the room. You don't know. Always take a guess. Never leave a question blank. As far as we understand, CompTIA does not penalize you for wrong answers. They only give you credit if you get it right. So why not guess? Never leave anything blank. You'll be able to get through all of that. Let's see how we did with this question. A system administrator has identified a firewall rule that blocks TCP 389. Which of the following services would be impacted by this policy? How do we do? Well, we are all over the place. We're not really sure how we did on this one. 34% of you, if we go with not a majority, but the top list here of 34% said VPN authentication, but 27% right behind it said secure terminal communication. We've got effectively a tie for the next three. 16% said automatic IP address configuration, 14% said name resolution, and 10% said router performance monitoring. Some of you are saying, well, what video has anything to do with port numbers? And you will find, if you're watching any of my study groups, that we show exactly the video that describes the answer during this answer session. In fact, this answer section, we talk about LDAP, the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. LDAP is a useful little utility. If you're ever in the case where you're trying to do anything dealing with administration of a system for reading information from directories, we rely on directories quite a bit in our enterprise networks. Microsoft has Active Directory. How do you get to Active Directory and read the information in there? You need some well-known protocol, such as LDAP. LDAP is a very well-known protocol. Goes back into the OSI days, and it uses TCP 389 and UDP 389 to be able to access those directories. There's a lot of different kinds of directories that you can access with LDAP. Active Directory, Apple's Open Directory, Novell eDirectory. And what we do is usually services that need to authenticate users, to check what groups users belong to check the name of a user. All of that information is queried using LDAP. So if you've ever logged into a wireless network with the same credentials you use to log into your server or your workstation, it's probably LDAP or some similar mechanism to be able to provide that. So LDAP using 389, this is something that would provide some type of authentication mechanism. It would check against things that were already in the database. So it wouldn't be name resolution. Name resolution is handled through DNS, so usually not something we would run into on TCP 389. Secure terminal communication for SSH doesn't use TCP 389. Router performance monitoring, that's probably SNMP. That does not use LDAP. That's its own set of protocols. And automatic IP address configuration, that's DHCP. So that does not use LDAP. The only one here that really would be impacted by this policy is someone authenticating into the VPN. What usually happens is you start a VPN process. You're sitting at a coffee shop. You need to access services that are on the inside of your corporate network. The only way you're able to do that is to connect through a VPN connection. So you bring up your VPN client and it asks for a username and password, and you put in the same username and password that you use for everything else in your environment. Well, that information is sent securely across the network to your VPN front end, which then has to decide if you've given it the right username and password. So it uses LDAP to talk to your Active Directory server, make sure that the authentication is correct. The Active Directory server says, yep, those two things match, and your VPN connection is then created. So anytime you're doing any authentication mechanism, you're using LDAP, Radius, or Kerberos. Those are very similar functions to be able to do that. So if you answered C, VPN authentication, only 35% of you got that one right. So hopefully we're able to do better on this next one. I like to see at least half of you getting this one right. Maybe that one was too hard. But now if you ever see TCP 389 come up on an exam, or you see LDAP come up on an exam, that's what we're referring to when we're looking at those. So if you're ever wondering what's on the exam, what's on any of these things, make sure you do that. People are wondering, where's this from? It's all in the exam objectives. The 22901 exam objectives have all of this information in them. If you've been blindsided and you're wondering, where did this come from? Where is this craziness from? And in fact, you'll notice on the slide I showed, comes from my 22901 videos, video section 2.4, Common Network Protocols is where that came from. So if you want to watch that video, you can run right to that video and you'll see everything you need to know about that particular topic. Let's do another one. I've got another one here dealing with command lines. So the question I have for you is, which of the following would be the best way to halt a Windows process from the command line? Which one of these would be the best way to halt a Windows process from the command line? You do have to know command lines when you're dealing with these types of things. So this is a good one to know. This one's a little more straightforward. The last one, you had to know what LDAP was and what LDAP does. Now we know we're trying to do something. We're trying to halt a Windows process. Do we use task kill? Do we use stop? Do we use shutdown? Do we use del? Or do we use halt? Which of the following would be the best way to halt a Windows process from the command line? Would it be task kill, stop, shutdown, del, or halt? One of those. I guess deal. Del? Is it delete? D-E-L? Maybe that's what it is. So hopefully you see a number of you answering this one. I think some of you might know this one. If you think you do know, please don't put any hints or comments in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer the question there. I'm going to take a sneak peek and see how we did with this one. If you've done anything at the command line with Windows, especially administration of a system, you've probably used this one before. This is very handy. If you ever want to halt a Windows process, and who doesn't, you want to halt it from the command line, this is the way you do it. It's a great way to do it. Have that there. Go to professormesser.com/QA. You can do that. So those of you wondering, the knowing what the differences are for the 901, 902, for the different exams, everything you need to know is going to be in the exam objectives. So make sure that you go to professormesser.com/objectives. It will redirect you over to the CompTIA website. That should be the first thing you download when you're studying. It should be the last thing you reference before you walk into your exam. It tells you everything you need to know for the exam. So make sure there's that piece of it. In the chat room, people are asking, is there a specific section that people tend to struggle with? No. And in fact, the question sometimes comes up of which is harder, the 901 exam or the 902 exam. And it really depends on what your experience has been up to this point. I used to work a lot with hardware. So for me, the 901 was easier than the 902. But I've run into a lot of people that are all about the operating system. Everything they've ever done is operating system. For them, the 902 was easier. So it just depends. I think both exams are equal in their difficulty level. So I don't think if you're comfortable with the difficulty of 901, you'll probably be comfortable with the difficulty of the 902 as well. So make sure you go through that and look through all of those different pieces. That will be very, very useful as you go through these. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of the following would be the best way to halt a Windows process from the command line? 67% of you said task kill. 18% of you said stop. 13% of you said halt. 1% of you said del, and 0% said shutdown. Maybe because we already used shutdown earlier. You knew what shutdown was used for. So nobody chose that one. And getting the details of that one, 67% saying task kill. Would that really be the right answer, though? Maybe we were fooled again. No, we weren't fooled at all. Task kill is an exceptionally easy utility to use. I demonstrate it in my section 1.3 of the 22902 videos, operating system command line tools, where I use task list to list out the tasks that are running on a particular computer. And then I use task kill to kill them. And you can kill them based on the name of the utility, the executable itself. You can do it based on a process ID or a PID, as we call it in Windows. So those are very good to be able to start, but primarily to view and stop different tasks that are running. If you don't have access to the graphical user interface, you can't pull up anything in an event viewer or a task viewer or task manager. You need to be able to do all of this at the command line. So make sure you do that and have all of those available there. So that kind of gives you an idea of the things you need to know. And in fact, if you did answer task kill, the 66% of you did get that one correct. Stop is not a command you can use to halt Windows processes. Shutdown obviously shuts down the computer or restarts it. We did that one earlier. Del is a key on the keyboard. It's not a command you would use, although del is an alias for a command at the command line that can delete files. And of course, you have halt. That is not used in Windows either to halt anything. So this is really where you're focusing on, is knowing all of these different command lines. So if you're somebody who's gone through the process of trying to figure out all of these command lines, everything's associated with them, there's tons of information you need to know. What I've done is take all of the important information from both my 901 videos and my 902 videos, and I've created a set of notes for you. So this gives you the highlights of everything you need to know from my videos. Of course, you could watch all the videos, and I, of course, recommend you take your own notes. But not everybody has enough time to do that. And of course, the 901 exam and the 902 exam are extensive. They have everything relating to networking and security and operating systems and hardware and virtualization and troubleshooting. There's so much there to be able to have all of those pieces there. This is a summary, if you will. It doesn't replace a book. It doesn't replace the videos. It's a way that you can have a nice set of notes that are created on all of these things. And this is also a great way to keep the website running. So if you're somebody who would like to contribute back to what we're doing when we create all of these free videos and free video courses, purchasing these course notes goes a long way. Every dollar goes into keeping everything running here. You'll find these course notes and the description of all of these available for $15 a piece for the 901 exams at professormesser.com/A+CN. Of course, there are these course notes available for the Network Plus exam, the Security Plus exam. If you're somebody who's studying for the 1000 series A+ exams, I have another set of course notes available on my website for those. So you never know whichever one you're dealing with, whichever one you're studying for, this is a good way to do it. Oh, and before I forget, Mrs. Professor Messer wanted me to create a physical version of the course notes. So there they are, all the course notes that are there go along with the digital versions that I have available on my screen here. Let's see, that's not the digital versions. There they are. There's the digital versions. So the A+ exams, you download these as a PDF file immediately, or have one that I will ship to you. And if you buy the physical version, you also get the digital version for free. That's another nice thing I throw in there if you were nice enough to get those and have those available. Find out all about that on the website. There's plenty to look at there, all at professormesser.com/A+CN. Let's do some more questions. Thank you, by the way, for those of you that have purchased those. It really does go a long way. And all those port numbers, as somebody mentioning in the chat room, all those port numbers, yeah, they're on there. Everything dealing with port numbers is on there. Those are important. So, of course, I put those into the course notes. Let's do another question. More about those. Here's the question coming up. Which of the following would be most associated with OLED? Which of the following would be most associated with OLED? Would it be inverter? Would it be TN? Would it be IPS? Would it be no backlight? Or would it be no burn-in? We now get to see how much people were listening earlier. I might have given this one away earlier. But did you listen in? Which of the following would be most associated with OLED? Would it be inverter, TN, IPS, no backlight, or no burn-in? Maybe you know the answer. If you do know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer this yourself. So for those of you wondering, is this a study group for the 9,000 or the 1,000 series? For the 900 series. 1,000 series isn't even out yet. It's not out till January. You won't see this for a while. So don't worry about the 1,000 series stuff. Once we get to that point where the exam is available, the study groups will, of course, be focusing on those. So this is one where let's focus on what we can do right now to be able to pass this exam. Pretty important to have these things here. I think a number of you should be able to get this one right, although a number of you were not listening. I know this because I'm getting multiple questions in the chat room of things that I've also said earlier. So this may be one of these tests where we get to see, were we really listening in to what was there? To have those things there, we'll find out as we get those pieces available. Some of you may be familiar with OLED and whatever in the world that happens to be. So hopefully you'll be able to see that. Yeah, for those of you wondering, it doesn't matter what series of exams you take, you get exactly the same certification. So even if you, on day one, took the very first day the 1,000 series exams were available, you took both of them the same day and you passed both of them, you would get exactly the same certification as if you took the 900 series 3 years ago. The only difference is when the expiration date happens, I guess. That's the only thing that's really unique about it. Which of the following would be most associated with OLED? Would it be inverter? Would it be TN? Would it be IPS? Would it be no backlight? Or would it be no burn-in? Well, how do we do with that one? 74% of you say no backlight. Well, 74% of you were listening earlier when I was talking about the rewind question that had on it LED, because one of the answers there was OLED. And I mentioned OLED doesn't have any backlight at all because OLED makes its own light. When you provide power into that OLED, has its own lighting system there to be able to make that organic LED lights up. Now, an inverter, therefore, is not needed because there is no backlight. There's no fluorescent or LED required, but fluorescent requires an inverter. You don't need an inverter. So that makes it very easy. TN and IPS are types of LED display that do not apply with OLED, certainly would not be most associated with OLED. And no burn-in, well, that is one of the big problems with OLED, is that they will burn in really quickly. If you have an OLED television, for example, which is generally those are the most common OLED implementations that you will see, although we have a lot of OLED mobile devices these days, but the OLED televisions have a screensaver on them, and if nothing has changed on that screen in about a minute, that screensaver kicks in because those televisions know that OLED is going to burn in pretty quick if you're not very careful with that. That's why a lot of people don't do OLED whenever they're playing video games. That can burn it in pretty good. Don't want to ever do something like that. Yeah, plasma has bad burn-in as well. Both OLED and plasma have problems like that. So make sure you're familiar with those pieces. No backlight, that is the answer. 74% of you answered D, no backlight. That is the correct answer. For our perspective on the A+ exam, really talk about OLED on mobile devices. That's where you really run into being able to see a lot of OLED. We do have mobile devices and laptops where you see generally less on laptops, though. As we're finding, there was this big push to get more OLED on laptop computers, but OLED uses a little bit more power and a little more expensive than having a traditional LCD. And what we found is that the LCD displays have gotten better with their color representation. So we found that on mobile devices, less expensive and almost as good as an OLED was good enough. And if somebody really wanted to have this on a laptop, nobody's going to pay the extra money. The OLED displays, they tend to degrade over time. So you do have those types of problems. Obviously, burn-in is an issue with OLED. It just didn't make sense for laptops. So we really never saw it kicking on laptops. Now, the other devices you would find this on are things like mobile phones. So if you have a mobile phone, you got OLED displays everywhere for these mobile phones. These are great things to have OLEDs for. And you find more OLEDs implemented in a mobile device like a tablet or a phone than you do on a laptop. So that's a good way to do it. So if you're one of the folks that answered D, no backlight, you'll find those there as well. Does come in handy to have that OLED functionality. If you need something where the color representation really, really, really good, that's a good way to do it. Make sure you go through. I know it sounds like OLED's not any good, but if you ever see an OLED television or OLED on a mobile device, you realize, oh, that's a great display. That is a beautiful screen. And you're wondering, I want this screen everywhere. I want it on a laptop. And then you realize it doesn't really apply that well, having it on a laptop. So it's another one of those things you just have to take the pluses and minuses. There are advantages and disadvantages to every single technology. You have to find the one that fits best for what you're trying to do. So that's an important consideration and things you need to know for your A+ exam, because they might present you with a scenario and say, what fits best here? So it's helpful to know those advantages and disadvantages, which is why I put advantages and disadvantages in my videos. You get to see the differences between all of those. Let's do another question. So here we go. Next question talks about a different operating system, Mac OS. Which Mac OS utility would be the best choice for mounting a disk image? Which Mac OS utility would be the best choice for mounting a disk image? Would it be Drive Manager? Would it be Time Machine? Would it be Disk Utility? Would it be Image Viewer? Would it be Disk Duplicator? One of those is the Mac OS utility that would be the best choice for mounting a disk image. I will give you a hint. Not all of these are actual utilities found in Mac OS. That's a little bit of a challenge. Would it be Drive Manager, Time Machine, Disk Utility, Image Viewer, or Disk Duplicator? So that's where you want to run into issues associated with that. So in the chat room, people are saying, I've got some OLED stuff. I got a tablet. I don't see much burn-in from watching movies, and I don't think you would. I think most movies are changing a lot. Where you'd see burn-in would probably be with games that always have the same information on the screen all the time. Movies are constantly changing. That's not anywhere where I would see. Now, if it was a television show you're watching, like a news show where they always have that bar at the bottom, I could see that as being an issue. That's something that might be a problem. A lot of TVs will also shift. They recognize that that's been sitting there a while, and they shift by a couple of pixels to try to keep things moving. So you'll be surprised how quick it happens. People are saying, no, it takes a long time. Not on these OLED displays. They will burn in pretty quick, depending on the type of technology and what's being used. Mobile devices don't have quite the need for a huge amount of power sent to the OLED display. So you've got some benefits over a much larger OLED panel. The burn-in's a little bit different in the way it operates. Let's see how we did with this, though. You do have to know about Mac OS for the 902 exam. And of course, for the upcoming 1002 exam. This is a good 901 and 1002, 902 and 1002 question that you need to know. We're almost doing the new exam right now as we go through that. I think everything we've done so far is on both exams. So in a way, you are getting some of the newer content as well. I did the numbers. We'll talk about in the after show. I'll give you the exact percentage of what topics are new on the new exam. The answer may shock you. I don't know why I did that. Sorry. So that's one of those that you do need to know. Mac OS and Linux are on the exam. You do have to have an idea of what those might be. Actually, the answer might shock you. Now that I think about this, that may not be quite the link bait that it was. It might be actually a little bit legit in that answer. It actually shocked me when I went through it. So you'll get to see if you're shocked. That doesn't have quite the same appeal, does it? Let's see how we did with this one. Which macOS utility would be the best choice for mounting a disk image? C, disk utility, got 64% of the vote. 11% of you said image viewer. 9%, a tie for third, really a three-way tie for third. 7% is close enough with drive manager, time machine, and disk duplicator. So we've got really almost everybody, 64%, more than half, certainly a majority, have said disk utility. So this is the challenge, is that if you've never run Mac OS, you may not even have any idea how any of these things work. There's all these weird names. Time machine's actually a thing. That's a real utility, time machine, but it's used for backups. It's not used for mounting disk images. Mounting, you can do a lot with disk images, create disk images, mount them, pull files out from them. All of that can be done in the disk utility in Mac OS. So if you have never used Mac OS before, and people in the chat room are like, I have no idea. That was a guess. I just took a stab because I have no idea how Mac OS works. You do have to know about Mac OS for your exam. Now, you don't have to know intricate details of installing the operating system and troubleshooting it, but you do need to be familiar with a high-level view of how it works. You need to be familiar with some of the popular utilities and how they work. So hopefully you can get a feel for what those are. So I'm running Mac OS on my computer. There's places if you don't have a Mac available, and these days most places you can go to, most public libraries, they have at least one Mac available. Might be worth your time to do that. There are a number of cloud-based services available where you can rent time on Macs, although that tends to be expensive because they require you rent X number of hours right up front. And you may not need that amount of time for Mac OS. So hopefully that would be something you can step through. But the disk utility allows you to mount an image, and so that you can take an image file in a Mac OS. The default image file format is a DMG. But that is effectively the same image format as an ISO. For those of you familiar with a CD image, that is an ISO file, it's effectively the same thing. And in fact, in disk utility, you can mount ISOs as well. This is what Windows does by default, where you can mount an ISO and suddenly you see it as if it's an entire drive with a normal file system in it. It's not just a single file. Same thing in Mac OS, and you use the disk utility application to be able to do that. You can even image information. You can restore that image. A lot of great stuff in there. And of course, all those details, thank you, chat room, they're in the notes. They're, of course, in the notes that you can find on the website. Those 64% of you that chose disk utility, absolutely correct. Drive manager, not a thing in Mac OS. 8% of you did choose that one. Time machine is a thing in Mac OS, but that's for backup, and 9% of you chose that. Image viewer, not a thing. It made sense. You wanted to view an image. You wanted to mount an image viewer. I just thought no, it's not a thing. Disk duplicator. That sounds kind of Mac OS-ish, doesn't it? It sounds kind of hip and trendy, but it's not. I made that one up too. So the only answer here that does make sense is disk utility. Those of you wondering, this comes from the 22902 section 2.1 Mac OS tools. It's always right there at the bottom of the screen on the descriptions on the answer page. So you can see exactly where to find this slide. You know exactly where this content is by going to the 22902 videos section 2.1, the video named Mac OS Tools. Hopefully that's something you're familiar with. Now, Let's shift gears a bit. I'll run through to this next question since we're getting tight on time. I don't want to miss anything. So we're going to do this question, then I'm going to back up to something else that's here. Some of you said, okay, you want a different kind of question. Let's shift gears back to the 901. Also, this applies to the 1001. In fact, all of these questions are on both of these sets of exams. I might as well just put 1001, 901. It's all the same thing. This one, though, dealing with the bane of everyone's existence, printing. A collective groan is heard through the internet wires right now. The question is that a user in the shipping department is printing to a network printer, but the output is garbled each time. The output from other users is printing properly. So which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? It's always that one person, and this is the case here. That one person is having a problem. They're printing to a network printer, but the output's garbled. Output from other users, printing just fine. They're not having a problem. It's that one person. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? Would it be a bad toner cartridge? Would it be the print queue is stuck? Would it be the optical drum is not cleaned properly? Would it be that the print heads are dirty? Or would it be an incorrect printer driver? All 5 of those things, certainly printing issues. Those are 5 things that could be a printing problem, but only one of these would be the most likely cause of this issue. To recap, a user in the shipping department is printing to a network printer, but the output is garbled each time. The output from other users is printing properly. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? A bad toner cartridge, the print queue is stuck, the optical drum is not cleaned properly, the print heads are dirty, or an incorrect printer driver. It is not PC load letter. Indeed, what is that? It does feel good to be whatever it is you're supposed to be. The answer, though, is one you do need to think about whenever you're going through this. This is probably something that would be useful to know. You have to make sure you have the proper amount of flare on, and then finally you can go through and figure out which one of these it happens to be. This is, in fact, people in the chat room going, oh yeah, this does happen quite a bit. This is a very common problem. You will run into this if you have to deal with people in the shipping department printing to a network printer. So make sure you're familiar with that. What you want to do is go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer this question. We don't want to put any hints or comments in the chat room because you'll put them in at that link. Obviously, if you're watching this in the replay, that link will not be available. You'll be sitting there at a blank screen wondering when this is going to happen. You have to be here live to be able to participate on those live channels. Make sure that you check professormesser.com/calendar to find out when the next live event is going to be. Yep, people in the chat room are commiserating with each other. Yep, happens all the time. Absolutely an issue. This would be a big problem. So that's one where you do have to go through and figure out the details of where would you run into this problem? How could you solve it? What would be the issue? I think this may be something a number of you have run into, and it's certainly one of the troubleshooting challenges that you will find if you look at the exam objectives. You have to know this type of problem. This comes directly from the 220-901 and the 220-1001 exam objectives. So make sure you know what this happens to be. Let's see how we did with this. We'll click the button, and 87% of you said incorrect printer driver. A vast majority said the problem is E, the incorrect printer driver. 6% of you said the print queue is stuck. 3% each said the optical drum isn't cleaned and the print heads are dirty. And only 1% said it was a bad toner cartridge. So incorrect printer driver, probably the issue that you would run into. This is where you're printing and what you thought you were sending to the printer, you've ended up sending a completely different language than what the printer recognizes, because these printers all have their own way of talking. Every printer, certainly every major printer manufacturer, generally has its own method of choosing what font types, what page is coming out of the printer, because there's different pages. Could take a letter, or it could take a manual feed, or it could take a legal size. There's different print languages that are used depending on the printer that is used. And you could have garbage nonsense like I have on my screen because you just chose the wrong printer driver. It might also be a problem because there's two very popular languages of laser printer language, which is PCL and PostScript. So if you send a PostScript printer PCL or you send a PCL printer PostScript, you'll also get garbage. So you really have to be very specific with these drivers, or you will get crazy nonsense garbage like the one you see on the screen right here. This is a problem. So the problem, and people are saying the problem they had with this question was the word garbled. Well, you do need to sift through the questions. Hopefully, I think that's a pretty clear determination of what this particular issue happened to be. And in fact, I'd call that garbled. That's a pretty garbled mess. That's not a colloquialism. That's a pretty common name to use for this. So if you did answer E, incorrect printer driver, yep, you got that absolutely correct to have those things there. Now, for those of you that are watching this for continuing education credit, the way that you would receive a digitally signed email from me certifying that you must have watched this 1 hour of the study group, you must follow this process. Go to the top or the bottom of the ProfessorMesser.com website, click on the Contact Us link, which is really Contact Me. It comes directly to me. It will ask you for your name. It will ask you for an email address. Make sure you get those right. Some of you don't get that one right. That's a big test right there. You got to get those right, because then I got to be able to send this back to you. I want to put your name on it, and I need to send it back to the right email address. Some of you thought, well, maybe if I put a different email, I won't spam you or something. But if you don't put the right email, it doesn't get back to you. So make sure those are right. Somewhere in the text that's there, you have to be able to put this word, which is, let's use printer driver. Our words of the month, our special code word of the month is printer driver, which is really 2 words, but we're going to call it the special code word of the month, printer driver. So put that in there. You can put anything in there. I'm the one reading through these. So if you'd like to put any other comments, any other messages, anything that's in there, I'll read through every single one of them. I'm not able to reply back always to every single one of them, but I do read every single one of them. So make sure you go through and put anything in there. Send it to me, and then in about a week or so, it depends on how things are going in my world, I'm able to send you back a piece of information, an email. It's digitally signed by me that says you must have watched this. I know that CompTIA doesn't require that you get anything digitally signed to prove or obtain a CEU. You don't have to do this. You can just say, I watched the study group, and I think CompTIA will take it. But I like that you have some proof here. I like that I sent you a digitally signed message. You can say, no, he absolutely did. You can verify the digitally signed message using my public key and verify that everything in there is correct. It's just another way to verify. That way, there's no question. I must have sent you this email. You must have had the correct code word. You must have followed the correct process. So here you go. You've got those pieces there that you can work through. So make sure you follow that process, and I'll send you that CEU email, and then you can use that for whatever you'd like. There's a lot of different ways to renew your certification. You may not use CEUs. That's fine. You don't have to send me the CEUs. Some of you will simply take the CertMaster CE. Some of you will take the Network Plus exam, which automatically renews your A+. You don't have to go through this process of collecting CEUs. There's a whole set of things you can do. The description of all of these things is on the CompTIA website. You just need to find the way that works best for you. You're trying to work through all of those different methods of doing that. I think we have time for another question. We're going to squeeze one in anyway. I'm going to get this last question in because I think this is going to be a good one. And then we'll open up the phone line. So our next question asks, this is a big one. There's a lot of text here, which is very similar to the exam, by the way. Security administrators found that an attacker has gained access to a file server. The file server is fully patched. The attacker appears to have used a previously unknown exploit to gain access. What type of security threat best describes this attack? Would it be man in the middle? Would it be DOS? Would it be 0-day? Would it be brute force? Or would it be spoofing? Those are 5 real security threats. All 5 of them are security threats you need to know for your A+ exam. But we have to read very specifically the question, which states, A security administrator has found that an attacker has gained access to a file server. The file server is fully patched. The attacker appears to have used a previously unknown exploit to gain access. What type of security threat best describes this attack? So hopefully you know the answer. It's going to be man in the middle, DOS, zero-day, brute force, or spoofing. And if you do know what the answer is, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can put the answer in there as well. You've got to know a little bit about security on the 902 exam. This is also on the 1002 exam. So this is another one that works on both of those back and forth. This is a good way to figure out if you really know the security pieces, because all 5 of those are pretty spot on with different utilities, different challenges associated with that. Make sure that you know what those happen to be. You should be able to break those down really well, have all those pieces available. See if you happen to know those answers. Yeah, this does help if you take Security Plus and if you take Network Plus. Some of this is in Network Plus as well. So if you know this question and answer, you already got some of the topics already done for your Network Plus and your Security Plus right there. So very easy. We'll talk about some questions dealing with the 901 and 902 in the after show. Some people asking about your passed your 901 2 weeks ago. I need to take my 902. How much time do I have? Have I messed up? Have I lost anything? I have the answer for you. Wait until the after show. I'll answer your question in just a couple of minutes. Right now, let's get the answer for this one. And if we see how we did, 62% of you said 0 day. Is that really the right answer? We got a tie for second with man in the middle and brute force, and then kind of a tie for third with a DOS and a spoofing. So what would be the answer here? This would be a 0 day attack. This is one where we are up to date with our patches. We've done everything we are supposed to do, but the bad guys, the attackers, have found a vulnerability that up to this point nobody knew about. They found a way in that nobody, even the manufacturer of the operating system or the manufacturer of the application, had no idea this vulnerability existed. And so there was no possible way that you could have patched for this because a patch doesn't exist. This is a 0 day in the attack. And this is a way, the bad guys, they keep a group of these 0 days. They love 0 days because there's no way for you to stop them. If they have this 0 day, they can get into anybody's system where this particular vulnerability exists, and there's no patches there. Most people will then, as soon as we recognize this 0 day, immediately people are trying to find ways to mitigate it, even without a patch that's there. And sometimes you can do that. Set up a firewall rule to prevent this type of traffic from coming through the firewall rule, or enable or disable a particular feature for this. It's called a 0 day because it happens on a day that we weren't prepared for. It happened immediately, the 0 day. This isn't an attack that happened on the first day the known vulnerability was available, or the second day that the known vulnerability was available. This is a 0 day. This is a bit of an issue. So this is one where you do have to read through. People are even saying in the question, it even said, this attacker appears to have used a previously unknown exploit. You do have to read through these and make sure that you don't read known exploit. I do that very quickly when I'm reading through the exam. I try to go through every question a second time, even if I think I knew it 100%, because sometimes I'll catch a place where it said not, or it said unknown, and I read it known. How would you protect against a 0 day? You don't. You don't. That's the challenge you have. The way you protect against it is you hope that somebody has found it and you're able to mitigate before somebody's able to use it. There is no protection against a 0 day. That's why you need layers of security, so that hopefully you've already set up a firewall that wouldn't allow that traffic to come in your firewall, so that somebody would not be able to take advantage of that vulnerability that would be on the inside of your network. So there's always things that, or maybe you layer it with some type of IPS, or a host-based IPS, or a method to watch for changes on a server and prevent changes that might be associated with the operating system. Maybe you're monitoring traffic flows on a particular server, and anything that looks odd, you realize something may have happened. There's things you can do to help mitigate, but you can't stop it. They have access. The 0 day is going to get you every single time. So if we look back, the 62% of you that chose 0 day, absolutely correct answer. That's the one you should have chosen. Now, can you believe we've gone through an hour of this? Me either. But we do another one of these every month. Next month, we skip the first Wednesday of next month. I think that's the second. Instead of coming back so quickly after New Year's, I decided to start a week after that on the 9th. So have a look at the calendar. If this is after January the 9th, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar. You know exactly when it is. I do one of these next week is the Network Plus study group, and the week after that is the Security Plus study group. So if you don't want to wait until next month for A+, you're always welcome to come back next week. We'll do the same thing. We'll go through a bunch of questions that I write specifically for this. We'll figure out the details. We'll go through all of that. Don't worry. Stick around. We've got an hour, at least usually an hour of Q&A that we do. Make sure you get the daily pop quiz questions on Twitter by going to professormesser.com/Twitter. Thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel. Smash the button, whatever those kids say, professormesser.com/YouTube. My course notes available at professormesser.com/A+CN. I also have quiz questions available in book form. You can find those at professormesser.com/PQC for my pop quiz collection. And of course, as I mentioned, check the calendar. Thank you for being here. We would not be able to do this without you being here answering these questions in the chat room and online. This is a great place to be. Stick around. In the second hour, I'll open up the phone lines. You can ask anything you'd like. Thank you for being here. We will see you next month on the A+ study group. Hello, chat room. Hello, everybody. So let's go through some of these questions. I'm going to get the phone lines open so that some of you can call in. Get this going. The actual Q&A process for those of you watching, either on the replay or those of you that are here live, we've done all the Q&A. At least the formal Q&A where I'm bringing things up on the screen and you're choosing A, B, C, to E. Now you can just ask questions in the chat room, like the guest is asking. Can you ask a question? Yes, you may. And I will answer the question. Maybe. Sometimes. Not always. Sometimes I'll answer the question. Let's get the phone lines open, though. I need to get that going first. And then once I get that going, I'll be able to answer questions, including some of those that folks brought up earlier, and having all those things there. One of the things that I do, especially in the chat room and online, is I'll back up through some of the things you asked earlier. So we'll try to get some of those things going too. Let me first host the show, start it up. Here we go. And I have to call into it first. So this is kind of the boring part first. Have all of those things there. So make sure we break out all of these different pieces. I'll get my Skype going first, and then you can get your Skype going. So I have to choose the right thing here and call in, and it's going to make some noises. Beep, 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 beep. There it is.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. And then I'm going to type a thing in on my screen, and it's going to say,
enter your 6-digit PIN number.
I will do that by typing in my 6-digit PIN number, which is redundant.
Welcome, host.
Welcome, host. There we go. So people were asking here in the chat room, you were looking at my pop quiz collection. Thank you. Wonder if you have performance-based questions in there. I do. For both the 901 and 902, I have performance-based questions in there, along with multiple choice. Any chance of setting up a Professor Messer Discord server? There is not. You go to professormesser.com. There's a chat there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the best place to go. And everything is there. You don't have to pay for anything. Very easy to have that there. So let's go back a little bit and have a look at that question that was asked quickly. You passed your 901 2 weeks ago. Congratulations. That's a good one to get through. So now you have to pass your 902 to be able to earn your A+ certification. Because you don't have your certification yet. You got to take both exams and pass both exams. So the 902, both the 901 and the 902 exams, those exams will be retired on July 31st, 2019. So you have to take both of those by July the 31st. You got effectively about 7 months before you have to get both of those done. Now, if you, for some reason, aren't able to pass your 902 exam before July the 31st, then you would have to start over. So that 901 you passed, it goes away. You lose it. effectively. So if you're somebody who is thinking, can I pass both of these exams in 7 months? Maybe you're just getting started and you're wondering, can I get through both of these? And most people take about 2 to 3 months on each one of these exams to study. So it may be just fine. You may say, absolutely, I can do this in 7 months. You go take both of these exams and you're done. Some of you are though like me, where I take about a year to get through one exam. So getting through 1 year, obviously I'll never be able to get through the 901 and 902 before they're retired. So you may want to download the 1001 and 1002 objectives and go through those. And as I mentioned, a lot of this very similar in both of those. I'm going to pull up my stats just so I have these available. I went through the 1001 and the 1002, and I compared them to the 901 and the 902. What are the differences? I went through each section, and I determined, is this topic something that is on the 901 exam, or is this new to the 1001 exam? And I told you the results may shock you. They might or they might not. They're actually quite different than anything I'd ever seen from a CompTIA certification update before. If you look at the 901 exam and compared to the 1001 exam, there are new topics. Some things were dropped from the 901, some things were added to the 1001. And if we count up the number of exam objectives, I count the way I count, which if you go through the objectives, it'll be pretty close to what you get. There are 565 objectives on the 1001 exam. Of those, 117 are new. It's not a lot. Actually, percentage-wise, 20.7% of them are new, just over 20%. We'll say 20%. We'll round it down to 20%. 20% of the 1001 exam objectives are new. I will tell you that is a very low percentage. Most of the time, you're in the 30%. The latest Security Plus was 65% of the content was brand new. It's almost a new exam. Previous A-plus exams were somewhere around 30%. This is down to 20%. And that's why, as I was talking during that first hour, I was telling you these are basically the same exam because 20% is not a huge difference in the two. If we look at the 902 to 1002 difference, the 1002 exam has a total of about 570 topics, about the same. And again, 23.3%. So we'll round it down to about 20%. Again, about a 20% difference between the 902 and the 1002. So if you're trying to figure out, is this a dramatic change? People have even said, wow, the 1001 and 1002 are such different certifications. No, they're almost the same. They're almost identical. A lot of the content is exactly the same. So this is one where you're not going to see much differences between those. And remember that if you're already doing this, to be able to figure out what I'm going to do, what is it that we're going to plan on doing? Do I take the 900 series or the 1000 series, the 900 or 1000 series? You'll have to look at the timing. But even if you make a bad decision with timing, maybe you think to yourself, oh, I can absolutely pass the 900 series before July 31st. No problem. And then life happens. And then something happens and you're not able to get as much studying in and you don't make it and you get all the way July and you haven't taken either one of these exams yet. It's okay because 80% of that studying that you've done applies directly back to the 1000 series exam, the 1001, the 1002. So don't worry so much about the timing on this one. Not as huge of a problem as we've seen in the past. Really concentrate on the exam objectives. CompTIA has made the 1001 and the 1002 exam objectives available for you to download right now from their website. I saw some people mention somewhere, Facebook or somewhere, that these are the exam objectives have changed dramatically. They've hardly changed at all. Not true. Look at them for yourself. You'll be able to make that determination. And really, I've been looking at the exam objectives for since the middle of the year, and they haven't changed at all. It's exactly the same there. So figuring out those details are very specific, and make sure you go through and have a look at those. Pretty important. Now, if you'd like to call in, you're more than welcome to. The phone number's up on right now. Some folks are already calling in. I'll be with you in just a moment, caller. The phone lines are available. And go to those phone lines at 855-785-7545 is a toll-free number in the continental United States. You can call from your mobile device or anywhere else. Doesn't cost you a dime. I pick up the cost on that one. You can also call in for free anywhere in the world through Skype. Skype will allow you to call toll-free numbers in the United States, and there's no Skype minutes required. There's no cost required. Simply log into Skype. You put a +1 at the beginning, +1 855-785-RJ45. That's +1 855-785-7545. In the chat room, this is probably the one thing that there will be a hoot and holler about because the topic of CPU sockets, that big list of 10 to 12 sockets from Intel and AMD that for some reason they make you memorize on the 900 series exams, has been dropped completely from the 1000 series. They just aren't on there anymore ever. And why should they? That doesn't even make sense to have them there, really. It didn't really fit with anything else that was, why do you need to know the socket number for this? Obviously, if you're building your own computer, it's important to have the correct CPUs, fit the correct socket on the correct motherboard. But generally, people are building their own computers. They're pretty good with that. And these days, how much of that do we do in an enterprise? Are we really going through the process of building our own computers in the enterprise? No. Are we matching CPUs to sockets in the enterprise? No. Now, do you still need to know CPU technologies? Yeah, you need to know what an LGA is. You know what a PGA is. You know what a ZIF connection is. But you don't have to know the Intel model number of a specific socket type. It just didn't make sense. Right, PC part picker. That's a perfect way to build your own computer so that nobody else will have that problem. Let's feel free to put any questions in the chat room you like, but let's go to the phone lines. The caller's been waiting an awful long time. Thank you for being patient. From the 908 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, I hear myself. Maybe they hear themselves. Make sure you listen into the phone.
Thank you so much for what you're doing for us all.
There he is. Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling
from? A lot of
from?
help.
You need to turn that stream down, or you're going to be about 10 seconds behind the rest of the world here. It's just like that. And we, of course, can do anything else for the last 10 seconds anyway. How are you, sir? What can we do for you?
I'm doing great. My name is Dan. I want to thank you so much for what you've been doing. It's been a lot of help to me, I'm sure a lot of others.
My pleasure, sir. Thanks so much.
Right. I got to say that of the questions that you put up today, I wasn't really familiar with many of them. I mean, I've been using a book called Complete Review Guide for CompTIA A+.
Okay.
And I've been going over the book and taking a sample test that was on, first of all, your practice test, and also the practice test that was on the internet.
Sure.
And I was like outlining the questions and the answers in the book to make sure I was highlighting them. And it seems like I'm just not getting it. It's just like there's too much going on, you know. It's like
you're not wrong.
I'm familiar with hardware.
The exams are so broad. If somebody was to look at those exam objectives, and I see this all the time online, is that people will say, oh, the A+ exam, that's so easy. I could do that with my eyes closed. And of course, the response I always give is, oh, so you're A+ certified? Oh, no, I've never taken that. And then you have no idea the breadth and the extensive list of exam topics that are in these exams. Now, obviously, you're not going to get a question on the exam. You're not going to get enough questions to cover every topic. You're going to get a sampling of questions that cover these different topics. But what I like to do in these study groups and what I like to do on my website and in my videos is cover every single possible topic you could ever be asked on the exam, and those come directly from those exam objectives. So if you haven't, have you got a list of the exam objectives from the CompTIA website yet?
I just looked that over, and what I came across, of course, were the vouchers that they offer to take the test.
There's obviously, in fact, I'll pull this up on my screen so that everybody can really get a feel for what this looks like. I'll bring up the 901 exam objectives on my screen. I've got them right here. Here's the 901 training course. Let me go into the objectives. This happens to be version 5. This is kind of an older version, but it's the version I used. It's actually looks different than the version they have now, but it's exactly the same content that's on there. So if we were to look at section 1.0, hardware, section 1.1, given a scenario, configure settings and use BIOS UEFI tools on a PC, you have to know about firmware upgrades and how to flash the BIOS. You need to understand BIOS component information such as RAM, hard drive, optical drive, and CPU. You need to understand BIOS configurations, including boot sequence, enabling and disabling devices, date and time, clock speeds, virtualization support, BIOS security, which includes passwords, drive encryption, TPM, LoJack, secure boot, built-in diagnostics, and monitoring, including temperature monitoring, fan speeds, intrusion detection, voltage, clock, and bus speed. That's just section 1.1. We aren't even into the other part of section 1 yet. That is just the details in the exam objectives for that section 1.1. So when people are asking me in the chat room, they ask me during the month in the chat room and send me emails, where should I be focusing my efforts? These exam objectives tell you exactly where you should be focusing your efforts. They tell you exactly the things you need to know. And so if you mentioned the stuff that was in the questions today, that some of this stuff you may not have recognized right off the top of your head, but trust me, it's in the exam objectives and it's in my videos because I use those exam objectives to make all of my videos. That's the best place I recommend people go to be able to have a checklist, to know of all these things I've read. I've gone through all these books and I've gone through all these videos and I've done all this Q&A, but did I really get everything? The only way you would ever know is to go back to these exam objectives and check off everything that's listed here, and so that you know in your mind, yep, I covered that topic. And if you didn't, you can circle it and go back to your resources and figure out more about that particular topic so you'll be ready if it comes up on the exam.
Great. And what's the website for that, for those exam objectives?
There's 2 easy ways to get there. One, you can go to professormesser.com/objectives, where I link you right over to the CompTIA website. But if you go to the Google machine and type in CompTIA exam objectives, the first link that comes up is the CompTIA website, and you'll be able to go from there.
Okay, Professor. Thank you so much for your help.
Absolutely. Appreciate you calling. And that's a good thing to know also with those exam objectives. It tells you everything. CompTIA is really the only company out there doing certifications that gives you this level of detail. Microsoft doesn't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. VMware doesn't do this. Hardly anybody else gives this level of detail. For the A+, when it was printed out this way in long form, it was a total, let's see how many pages in. I'm 14 pages in, 15. I think there were 3 or 4 of these at the top, but it's about 12 pages of exam objectives. Microsoft gives you a page. Cisco gives you a page, and they're not detailed at all. They're not a checklist at all. So take advantage of that. Use that to your advantage. When you're ready to take these exams, it's a great check to be able to know exactly if you've studied everything. And I find that it's extremely comprehensive. All my videos, all my course notes, everything I write comes directly from that list. If it's not in that list, I don't cover it. And that may be an advantage or disadvantage, but since we're trying to pass a certification exam that has such a very specific set of topics, I don't tend to go outside that scope. I tend to focus on that topics. Should you know more than what's on that list of exam objectives in IT? Of course you should. But we're trying to pass an exam here, and there's plenty to learn just in that list. Trust me. 100% of what they ask on your exam is going to come from that. They don't deviate outside the scope of that list very much. Sometimes they do, and they will tell you in the exam, we could be asking you a question that's not on our list, and it may not even count. So there's one of those things. Hello, caller. Which name were you calling from?
803.
Yes, you are, sir.
All right. I'm calling from Macon, South Carolina. And first off, I'm Lamazia Benjamin.
Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
I guess I was just calling because I just recently took the A+ certification. Well, the first part, and I passed it.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Yes, sir. I guess I'm just more concerned about how I guess the next test would be. I guess the feel for.
This
The
is,
first one,
which
it
one
was
did you take first, the
fairly-
901 or the 902?
The 901.
Okay. And got through that one.
Yes, sir. Well, I watch your videos and stuff on YouTube and stuff. It helped. Yeah, I guess helped me pass that.
Great. So, and I'll ask this question because this comes up a lot. Whenever I started in the industry, I was doing a lot of hardware stuff. I was getting into the computers and doing more break, fix, and repair work. So when I took my exam, I took the 901 exam. I was very comfortable with the 901 exam. And then when I moved to the 902, or what was, it was the 601 and 602 at the time. So when you run into that, the challenges I found was that I needed to brush up more on the operating system because I wasn't familiar with that. But one of the things I found is that people who are very familiar with operating system, it's exactly the reverse for them. They're very comfortable with the topics on the 902 and not as comfortable on the hardware. So in a way, it's very common to pick the exam that you're very comfortable with and do that one first. My comment whenever people say, now how do I prepare for this one that I was really uncomfortable with, is exactly the same way you did in the most recent one. You go through the exam objectives, you step through them one by one, you get an understanding of what CompTIA is expecting from those particular exam objectives, which they're very good with in the exam objectives. They spell out almost everything. And then you just spend the time to do that. And I usually tell people they need 4 things. They need a good book, they need to watch some videos, they need to do some Q&A, and they need to get as much hands-on as possible. And for the 902 exam, I would really recommend you do get as much hands-on as possible. When you're working in an operating system and you're trying to find all of the different pieces and components, it's helpful if you do it once or twice. It kind of solidifies it into your brain, I find. I might have lost you there. Does that make sense? Are you still with us? Maybe not. But hopefully that's kind of solidified in your mind. Whenever I start breaking down and trying to figure out which one of these is harder, I don't think either one's harder. I think from a difficulty perspective, they are exactly the same. I think they're exactly as difficult. It's just the topics may be different to you, and you may have to spend some extra time doing that. So hopefully that'll cover those pieces. So those were the 4 things. So get those 4 things. Get a good book, watch some good videos, do some Q&A, get plenty of hands-on. If you do those 4 things, I think you're going to be just fine. Some of you have asked where I mentioned hands-on, but hands-on might be difficult because the A+ exam expects you to have knowledge in Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8. And on the 1001, it's not much different. It's Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10. How do you get your hands on all of these different operating systems? Now, fortunately, there's not much difference between all of those operating systems. However, there are some minor differences between those. And one of the ways I would recommend that you get some hands-on on each of those is to go to Microsoft's developer website for Microsoft Edge or whatever their next browser is going to be. This is a website where they make available to you under the Tools pull-down menu a set of virtual machines. And these virtual machines are running Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10. If you're running Windows 7, it's effectively the same thing as Windows Vista. People think it's 2 different operating systems. It's the same thing, people. They just renamed it because you hated Vista. Windows 7 is Windows Vista, and everybody thinks it's something else, but it's not. Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10. If you know Windows 7 and Windows 8 for your 902, and then Windows 7, 8, and 10 for your 1002, they let you download them. They're a virtual machine, free. There's no licensing involved. They time out after 30 days. After 90 days. And then after 90 days, what do? You download them again. As long as you're using them in a lab or for testing or for non-production uses, I've already gone through the licensing for all of this and looked at it. As long as you're not using it for production purposes, you're not using this as your primary operating system, you're not using it to do things in production, these are perfectly legitimate for you to use for your studies. That's from modern.ie, modern.ie. That will take you directly to the site for that. So make sure that you have a look at those. That can be a very, very good way to go through this list. Back to the questions from the chat room. Some of you are asking, is there an audio for this study group? There is always a replay. A video replay is available on ProfessorMesser.com. A podcast version of these study groups is always available at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. And you can subscribe to the RSS feed or play the podcast directly from there. These podcasts are also available on a lot of different streaming services. So if you go to Spotify, you go to iHeartRadio, you'll find the podcasts. Podcasts are available there as well. To have those things there. So that's the details of that. People are asking, am I thinking of taking the new A+ exams? Ironically, I don't take the exams. I intentionally do not take the exams. The reason I don't is that when you take the exam, CompTIA requires that you sign a non-disclosure agreement. And this, let me find that CompTIA, this would be your candidate agreement. If you Google CompTIA candidate agreement, they will tell you all of the things that you can do and you can't do. One of those is you really can't say anything about the exam, period. Nothing about your exam experience you are allowed to talk about at all. So a lot of times people say, even if you say I had this number of questions on my exam, technically that's a violation of the candidate agreement. It's very, very broad. It covers anything relating to the exam. You will not disseminate actual exam content by any means. What is actual exam content? It's effectively anything. It's very broad. So I don't take the exams because if I took the exam, I would not be able to talk about what was on the exam. It does me no good to take it. The last ones I did, I think, were the 800 series. So that's one of those things that I just don't, so that I can tell you everything. Because people tell me, did they violate the candidate agreement when they told me? Yes, they did. Do I violate the candidate agreement when I tell you? Nope. So is it plus or minus? I, of course, am very specific not to provide you or even talk about actual exam questions. You will never find actual exam questions on my site. All the content I create is original content to me. I don't farm out this process. I don't have other people write this for me. Everything on my site that's in my videos, the questions that I do every day for pop quizzes, the questions that are in my books, and the questions you see here, everything that you see from me is all original content. The only way I can really do that is to not take the exam, ironically. So that's one of those things. It's a balancing act, and I'm getting plenty of intel from other people as to what's on the exam that I feel like I'm giving you information that is valid, and I do a lot of double and triple and quadruple checking of this to make sure the things I tell you really do apply back to the things you're going to find on the exam. This is always a challenge, of course. When you get to something like these new exams, there's, of course, going to be a new set of questions. Are these questions going to be very different than the questions in the past? We don't know yet. Those won't be out until July 15th. But behind the scenes, trust me, I'm doing a ton of intel. I'm doing plenty of recon. So I will know very, very quickly what you should be able to expect on the exams, because ultimately that's the most important thing for you. I see in the chat room, some folks are asking about SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS, the platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service. I detail all of those in my videos and give you some specific examples of each one of those. That may be the best place to go. So I think that's one great way to go about and figuring out those details of those pieces. I think those are pretty straightforward. I think the last set of them I did was for the Network Plus exam. So you may find that the section in the Network Plus videos probably is the most up to date. And I think I tried to make the most clarification, especially as you get into things like platform as a service, that a lot of people have a wondering, how is that different than software as a service? Infrastructure as a service is kind of easy, because infrastructure as a service is one where you don't even have to think. That's just hardware. They throw hardware at you and you take it from there. But software and platform, there's a little bit of a difference. You run into, it's really the difference between somebody who wants to do programming and somebody who does not want to do programming. I'm the people that do not want to do programming. I'm one of those folks. That's one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize is when we talk about information technology, which is really where the A+ exam, the Network Plus, the Security Plus exam are focused on, IT security in general, are all focused on information technology. IT focuses on building out an infrastructure, building out a network, configuring servers, loading operating systems, and keeping all of those things running with the applications that are on top of all of that. There's another part of technology that is computer science. It is the programming side. That is not information technology. A lot of people tend to put coding as a I don't know, they sprinkle coding on everything. Oh, you're working with computers, you must be doing coding. And if you're working with computers, why aren't you doing coding? Everybody should be doing coding. Coding. They sort of throw it out there. I notice the people that tend to do that are the people who have no idea what coding is. Programming is a science unto itself. It is a set of knowledge and skills that are very different than IT. So there is certainly scripting and some basic logic of scripting and automation that you will find in IT. That is very different than programming. So people ask all the time, what programming languages should I learn? You shouldn't learn any. If you're in IT, don't worry about programming languages. Focus on these. Now, if you want to learn a programming language, please go ahead. In my history, I've learned a number of different programming languages. One of the first companies I ever wrote was one where I sold software, and it was all written in Visual Basic with APIs to Novell Network servers. So that gives you some idea of the history there. But it compiled it as an executable, and it worked fantastically. It was great. But it's one of those chances where I got to go, programming's not for me. Let's do more operating systems. Let's work through those pieces. I think that would be a better place for me to be. And that worked much better. And I know the good example of this, and this happens all the time with sort of the traditional university college environment, is someone here in the chat room who's got an IT degree that requires they do programming. I don't know why. Because there's no IT department out there that does programming. It doesn't work that way. We specifically separate those things out because they are separate. That's the reason you don't see people in taking a Microsoft certification, a Cisco certification, a CompTIA certification. There's no huge emphasis on programming on any of those because you will never do any of that as part of those job descriptions. Yep. So, and I had the same problem when I went to college back in the 1960s, whenever I went to college, back in the day, when I went to college, it was the same situation. There was an information technology degree. It was really at that time called an MIS degree, a management information system degree, where half the degree was really about management of a business. The other half of the degree is you had to go to like 6 or 7 different programming classes. It makes no sense whatsoever. That's the dumbest, and in fact, it hasn't changed much since then, has it? That makes no sense. That's ridiculous. Some organizations are starting to figure it out. I think that whenever you start breaking out, where do you go from here? How do you do this? Where does it make sense? Look to see what people are offering in their IT degrees and see if they have programming requirements in there. Now, if they're doing scripting, if they're telling you need to learn Python, that's different. Python isn't programming. Python is scripting. I know people can fight with me over this, but there is a nuance there, and there is a line that's drawn there. And learning a programming language and understanding all of the things associated with doing actual programming and application development is remarkably different than learning how to orchestrate using Python. Completely different world. Here's somebody learning Java and Python. There's those two things don't match each other. They don't meet each other. Is it a valuable skill to have to learn a programming language? Yes. Does it have anything to do with IT? Nope. Does not. It will not. Is there value in knowing these things? Of course there is. But you could spend your entire life trying to become very skilled in programming. That's the reason we don't do this. That's why programming isn't part of IT. We already have enough things to learn. Just learning how to configure and set up a firewall can take you years of your life. So that's one of those things where don't worry about that so much. Don't worry about the details of that. You'll be able to figure out the rest of the programming stuff will pass off to the programmers. We're going to deal with orchestration and IT and servers and firewalls and keeping the network up and running. That's the real key. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to my folks in Florida, 954 South Florida calling in. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Are you there, Florida?
Hello, this is Kevin from Pembroke Pines.
Oh, Pembroke Pines, back my old neck of the woods there on Pines Boulevard. Thank you for calling, sir. What can we do for you?
How you doing? Professor Messer, I called you on back around September or August.
I think I remember this.
And I was talking about the age discrimination and stuff like that.
Yeah.
About me doing an application for Best Buy.
Sure.
Yeah, because afterwards I landed a job at a call center for over here at Apple. I finally got to the nitty gritty what that was all about. It was about a tax credit.
Okay, whatever that means.
It was about a tax credit that they'll give employers if you are below the age of 40.
What is that? Below the age of 40 tax credit? I have no idea what that even is.
Yeah, it's called a tax employer credit.
Okay.
Because right afterwards, when I started that new job, I had to sign an application in at the same thing.
Okay. Well, that makes a little more sense. There is tax credits available to companies. This is small business stuff. If they are over a certain age, if they hire older employees, apparently there's a tax credit associated with it. Who knew? So there you go.
Yeah. So anyway, I also want to thank you because your tutelage really helped me out passing those exams. And now I landed a job with Apple, and I'm doing tech support with Apple. So, everything is going wonderful for me.
That's fantastic. I'll have to get your name and number because I might have questions for you later.
So I just want to thank you for that and clarify that situation when I called it way back in September. That's all.
That's great. And that's fantastic to know. And I kind of like that there is a benefit to an employer for hiring someone who's older. Ostensibly, this is probably to combat ageism itself and to let employers know these are valuable people you should be hiring anyway.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's like if you get a tax credit, you hire young people.
Well, the ones I saw a tax credit for hiring older employees that were over 40. I
would think it would be older. I would think that would be older, but that's your people for under 40 age. If you under 40, they'll give you a tax credit.
The one I'm noticing is a tax credit. This is from the U.S. government. It not only is a tax credit for people over 40, there is a Hiring Military Veterans Act of 2011 that gives tax credits for hiring those people and a work opportunity credit as well. This is part of the problem for anybody, by the way, who is an employer. Obviously, if you're the employee, you don't have to worry about too much of this. But as an employer, there are so many different rules and regulations you have to deal with. I'm not surprised you got wrapped up in one, but I'm certainly glad you figured out the details there. And congratulations on the job with Apple, too. That's a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, there's a lot of on-the-job training, which is kind of, hectic at first because basically they don't really teach you the job. You just get on the phones out doing tech support, and they got current employees that will help us out, whatever. But it's like you basically learn as you're doing a job, and you come up a little bit retarded at first because I didn't know everything too much about Apple. You got to know all the ins and outs about Apple and everything else, and iTunes and iCloud.
You will find that in technology, as you move, because your next job, you'll have another job in technology. You're going to work for another company someday. Drinking from the fire hose is a constant situation. I have been working for companies where I started doing break fix. I moved into manufacturers organizations where we had to learn individual products. And if you aren't completely lost on the first day, then you're in the wrong job. If you already knew all this stuff, then why did you get that job? You need to be in a job where you're learning these things. And I even found in the last job I had, which was working for a next generation firewall company, a completely new set of technologies that I'd never touched before. In fact, we were creating new technologies in security. Imagine having to learn all of those that not only you didn't know it, nobody knew it yet. So these are great places. If you find yourself in a room not knowing something, trust me, as weird as it sounds, you're in exactly the right place.
Yeah, prior to this job, I didn't know nothing about Apple. But even with that being said, it's like they're really like they throw you on the phones like a couple days after the orientation. They'll throw you on the phones and they did basically have current employees try to help you out. But the problem is, it's a lot of stuff with technical support and people are called in and it's overwhelming. But I'm starting to get the hang of it now because I'm like learning all the ins and outs of it. But it was just like they should have, at least try to. That's why a lot of my coworkers quit. They quit doing the probation period.
Yeah, you don't. People in the chat room
they were too lost.
I think people in the chat room are making a good point. Is you don't learn anything unless you get it wrong. So you can't be afraid of doing those types of things either. And quite honestly, could they even teach you everything you would need to know before sitting down taking phone calls? Probably not. It probably is what they found is you learn faster if we stick you on the phones, give you somebody to partner with, and make it so that you're not afraid to say, I don't know, but let's find out.
Well, I hope so, because they didn't like teach us like basic stuff, like the basic stuff, like if the caller X in and want to talk to a Spanish speaker, how do you transfer that call? That's like basic stuff.
That's a good question. And those are things you have to know, but you're never going to know unless you sit down and do it as well. Eventually it's going to come up and you have to recall it there as well. So hopefully that makes sense. That's a great experience to be in though. And congratulations on having that opportunity.
Okay, so thank you. I just want, like I said, thank you for your tutelage and thank you for your time.
Absolutely, sir. I appreciate you calling.
All right.
Take care. That's fantastic. I think whenever I start looking at what do I do, where do I go with some of these things I'm trying to figure out, I've been in these calls, in these meetings, because you get hired for a company. You know very little about the technology. These companies, though, are very good about training you. So whenever I sit down and try to figure out what I'm supposed to do, I got to a point with a lot of these companies where I'd sit on the front row. And if I didn't understand, I've gotten very comfortable with going, hold on a second. Nobody else in the room saying anything, but you could tell nobody else in the room knew what was going on either. So I'd say, hold on. You'd made a jump there and I didn't follow your jump. Back up to what you just did and take me through that process. And it's remarkable how the rest of the room goes, yeah, we had no idea what you were talking about either. Like, well, why didn't you say anything? But people are afraid to say, I don't know. I got to a point in my career, I was perfectly fine saying, I don't know, because I knew the things I had in my wheelhouse. I knew the things that I knew. I would do the things I was very comfortable with. If you were talking about something I didn't know, let's back up a little bit because I need to figure that piece out as we're going through these. You will always be learning with IT. There will always be things you don't know about the technology. There will always be opportunities to learn more about them. So that's one where, especially when I start looking at how do I learn more, the best way to learn more is to either break something or say, I don't know. And it's two things that we're both uncomfortable with as human beings. But the more comfortable you get with it, the better of a technologist you're going to be able to be. Back to the chat room. Quickly. Let's go through this. Question, if you pass 901 now, and then you're unable to take 902 until next year, what happens with the new version coming out? Well, if you take your 901 now, and if you pass your 902 before July 31st, you're A+ certified. It doesn't matter what happens with an exam. They could change the exam 20 times in the next 2 months. It wouldn't matter. You were already A+ certified. Now, if you aren't able to take your 902, then that's it. Once the 900 series is retired on July 31st, you start over again. You don't want to be in that position. of having to start over with all these. So make sure you're able to take and pass both exams before they are retired. That's the most important part. It's something we don't have to worry about with Network Plus because it's one exam. You don't have to worry about it without Security Plus. It's one exam. But the A Plus requires you take 2 separate exams. So you do have to think a little bit about time management long term, because you don't want to be in a position where you're now caught. You're now in a situation where, oh, you're right, I don't have time to take the 902. I already passed my 901. I paid for it. I passed it. Everything was great. And now I'm stuck and you have to start over again. You do not want to be in that position. So make sure that as you're thinking about your next steps, that you really go through the process of timing it out. Am I going to have enough time? Maybe you start with the 1000 series. The 220 1001 and the 220 1002 might be a better solution for you. I have traditionally in the past said, no, we're not. You should not look at the newer exams. Don't worry about that yet. They're not out, but 6 months is not a lot of time in the big 6 or 7 months right now is not a lot of time in the big picture. So the new exams are released on July 15th. We have already seen that some publishers have said our books aren't going to be out until March. So for a lot of you, you're not even going to have study materials until March, and then the 900 series is retired at the end of July. So this may be a situation where it might make more sense just to wait a bit, or download the exam objectives right now and start studying them. As I mentioned, the exam objectives for the 901 and the exam objectives for the 1001, very, very similar. They're in a different order. They're very mixed up, as a matter of fact, into a different order. But one of the advantages you have is that it's the same content as long as you match it up okay. It's very similar content. There's things missing, there's things added, but it's not a lot. And I hope to make some of that available. I'll have a more detailed overview of all of that in next month's study group. So in the after show next month, we're going to go through that in quite a bit of detail and really break it down. Let's go to the phones real quick to the 289 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Are you there? 289. Are you muted? Are you not there? Am I not there? Which, of course, is entirely possible. In this case, it is not. Sorry we weren't able to get to you. They hung it up. They were not interested in chatting. That's one of the things I've run into is a lot of people asking about the 1000, 1002 and asking about content and materials for that. And I think that's one of the reasons now I used to only put these materials out when the exams were available. But if you go to ProfessorMesser.com right now, you'll find I've started already posting the 1001 videos, and I've already got my course notes are available for the 1001 and 1002. So in a way, I'm the first publisher that has made 1001 and 1002 content available to anybody. So we're just putting it out there. And whether you're able to use it or not, of course, my 900 series is always out there as well. So none of this is going away. I never delete anything. It's always out there. So you're able to find all of those pieces. Well, we're at the top of the next hour. I'm quickly going to take a couple of calls. Then we're going to see how long my throat lasts from there. So let's go to the 404 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Douglas, and I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Welcome, sir.
I was calling questions. So if I go ahead and get the 901, 902 questions, would they be good for a job?
It very well might be. And in Atlanta, especially, I think a lot of employers in the Atlanta area are very tuned into the A+ certification. That's what I found. The A+ certification, and that used to be my territory, and talking to different companies in your area, there's a huge opportunity for IT in the Atlanta area. What I would recommend doing would be to look at the job postings in your area, go to the different job posting websites and see what employers are looking for. I also, and I've mentioned this in earlier study groups, go to a Microsoft user group meeting in your area. There are multiples happening in the Atlanta area. Go to one of those meetings, meet the people that already work at those companies, and ask them, hey, I got my A+ certification. Do you think I could get in with the help desk in your company? And see what they say. Or even ask them, what do you think I should get to be able to work with your company? They might have the best answer than you'd find anywhere else. Both of those would be good places to go.
Got you. So you saying just go ahead. If I do get it still be good?
If you take the 901, 902, you're certified for 3 years, regardless of what happens with the certification exams. So as soon as you lock it in and get your A+ certification, that's all the employers care about.
I got you. So, all right. So 3 years. Oh, I see. All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. And so one of the things you'll notice is that your A+ certification doesn't say what exams you took. And in fact, of course, if you took the 900 series exams, if you take the 800 series exams, and you've simply been updating and keeping your A+ certified, and you kept renewing it, so it was recent, it was an updated version, you haven't taken an A+ certification exam in 5 or 6 years, but it's still valid A+ certification. And that's what the employers are looking for, is that level of detail. To the 808 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Jasmine, calling from Hawaii, and I have 2 questions if you have time.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one is about rootkits. I was wondering the secure boot function, like how effective it is, and or what are the best ways to defend against rootkits?
So that's the first on your list. What's the other question?
The second one was, what's the most simple way to explain clocking and why it's important?
To explain what specifically?
Clocking, like what is it?
Did you say clocking, like the CPU clock?
Yes.
Okay. So let's step through both of those. One thing that's an advantage you're going to find when it comes to rootkits is they're kind of rare. You don't find a lot of rootkits out there, probably because they're really, really bad things to have happen to your computer. And generally, they're getting into the operating system. And it's one of the big reasons that we came up with a secure boot process for our BIOS, because the secure boot can look at the operating system before it starts up the OS, checks to see if it's been properly digitally signed, make sure nothing has been changed with the boot process of that operating system, and then it can start up that OS. So it effectively becomes a protection mechanism against rootkits. And that's why we don't see a ton of rootkits these days. In fact, it's extremely rare that anyone would be able to circumvent that process. It's practically impossible because digital signatures are extremely secure. And then that means that we don't have to worry so much about rootkits getting onto anybody's system. Now, rootkits will still happen on other systems that don't have a secure boot in their BIOS, or it's an operating system that doesn't have that type of technology. It may or may not be something that exists in a mobile phone or tablet, for example. So that comes in handy. As far as the clocking, well, there's so many different clocks inside of your computer. Who knew that your computer had so many different clocks? One for the memory, one for your CPU, one for the video card, one for the different buses that are in your computer, a clock for your USB 3 versus your USB 2. Sometimes they share the same clock, but with different multipliers. So it's a little bit more of a broader answer than just knowing what a clock is in a computer. But it is the fundamental orchestrator, the one that keeps everything working all at the same time, and making sure that everything is running and keeping track of what's happening inside of a computer. It's an extremely valuable thing to have in anyone's computer. And it's one that it's useful to know what some of those things are too, so that if you're looking at frequencies and the rates of transferring of data for memory, you can apply some of those things back to a fundamental clock as well.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. There is a broad scope of things that you will need to know for the A+ certification hardware. Clocking, certainly one of those. Rootkits are in the 220, the 902 and the 1002, because that's where the security piece is. Those are good things to know as well, and working through those. Well, we've come to the end of another hour of online Q&A, some of it spot on, some of it sublime, some of it unusual, but all of it good. I could not do this without you being here. Thank you so much for the questions in the chat room. Thank you so much for calling in and asking questions there as well. I love to do these every month. Check in next month for the next A+ study group. Of course, we have another live event next week with the Network Plus study group, and the week after that with Security Plus study group. So plenty of opportunities to get those questions in. And as I mentioned, you can ask whatever you would like in the after show. Doesn't have to be about technology. It could be about hairstyles. It could be about what games we're playing. It could be about anything. Probably keep out of the realm of politics and religion, but anything else, I think we're absolutely willing to talk about. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here in that first hour of Q&A. Thanks for sticking around to the after show. And thanks for everything else you do throughout the month and the support you give to the website. We really could not do this without you. We look forward to seeing you. For those of you that I'm not going to see next week or the week after, have a great new year, and we'll see you in January for the next A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.